What's up, everybody? Mike D right here. We got Ronvè at the side, man. How you doing today, sir?
I'm good, man. I'm excited, bro.
Yeah, man. We've been researching for weeks and weeks to delve into the production side of Kanye West's debut album, The College Dropout. Now, vinyl right there.
Yeah, man.
Now, when it came to Kanye, and we already covered Akumina, Outkast, Atlanta, Georgia, so we got the South covered there. Then we went East Coast with, we had to start with Nas's Illmatic. We were debating if we wanted to go West Coast with either Doggy Style or To Pimp a Butterfly, or Midwest with the College Dropout. And we thought the College Dropout, being so pivotal in its era, it does two things, right? We covered two albums that were in the 90s. This takes us into the 2000s. We're able to cover that region, but then it was one of those things where people were like, well, if you're going to do a Kanye album, why not My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy? I love Late Registration. I love Graduation.
Right.
But it's something about the College Dropout that has to be covered. And once we start delving into the research side of things, we were like, you know what, we made the right choice. There's a
Yeah.
lot of layers with this album. What were some things that,
Oh
man,
man.
I don't know where to start, but what were some things that you took away from your research before we really just delve into it?
This is one of those albums. First of all, I originally wanted to do Late Registration because at the time that was my favorite produced. That's my favorite produced Kanye album.
Hmm.
Uh, that being said, after doing all this research, it's like I don't know, man. College Dropout might be up there for me now. It's one of those that it's already a great album, like listening to it, but then when you take in consideration the stories behind it and how it was made, what it took for him to just to get there, just to get this to the finish line, this could be argued one of the greatest produced albums we've ever seen. Um, I think the biggest thing, one of the biggest things, two of the biggest things rather, that I took away was Kanye. Kanye West as a producer could easily be. I feel like early on we put him in the we could say like Q-Tip, RZA, Pete Rock,
Hmm.
even Jay Dilla box, just in terms of style.
Okay.
And what I realize is, and you can, and this is going even with his work after College Dropout, he's actually more in line with the Puffs, the Dr. Dre's, the JDs, even the Jermaine Dupri's. And what I mean by that is he incorporates like heavy instrumentation, incorporates a lot of sung vocals, a lot of vocal arrangements, um, and a lot of unorthodox song structure as opposed to just sort of keeping it boom bap, and just keeping it pretty, in at least in the hip hop realm, just keeping it to your 4 to 8 bar hook, 16 bar verse, and so forth. He really, just in terms of the presentation, the approach to the presentation is that of a Dr. Dre than it is, say, a Pete Rock.
And
Um,
somehow he finds a way to give you the feeling that you
right.
get when you hear, Tip, Pete Rock, Dilla, and those
Yeah.
guys. It's that, and when people talk about soulfulness and you're a soulful dude or whatever, I think people are thinking about soul samples
Hmm.
specifically, but it's definitely more than that. It's something that you know this album is full of intangibles, and it's one of those things that, yes, soul samples are being used and other samples are being used as well, but it's a soulfulness that it innately has that go deeper than the samples themselves, and it's one of those things you just can't explain. Like, I remember it was a interview with James Brown when he was trying to explain what he does, and he didn't have any real words for it other than like funk and soul. And it's like it's an intangible thing. It's a feeling that you feel. Like you said, he doesn't make beats like Dilla in that sense, but that feeling that you get when you hear some of that stuff is that same feeling that you can't explain when you hear a Dilla track.
Yeah. Well, and there's it's funny because like I think about albums like Late Registration and Twisted Fantasy, where on a technical level, those albums are perfect, pristine, just immaculate, just in terms of the execution technically. College Dropout on a technical level is a flawed album. It's not a perfect album. Um, I feel like some of the mixing on it, especially the drums, could be. I feel like just listening to it, this could have been an engineer's worst nightmare of an album because there's so many files just to mix. I look at
Yeah,
a song like "Never Let Me Down," which is one of my favorite songs ever, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I might spend a lot of time on that song.
yeah.
But that song alone seems like an engineer's worst nightmare, just because there's uh, so many files, so many vocals, so many instruments, and that's just one example. Um, College Dropout is not a perfect album, but it's the imperfections that sort of make it perfect, if that's for lack of a better way of putting it.
Did you
Um,
see RZA's how was like I said Breakfast Club interview?
mm-mm,
You got to check it out. It's about an hour long, and he said something in there that it's funny that we were doing all this Kanye recon, but he was talking about the beauty of mistakes and the fact that a lot of the great things that they did were through mistakes.
yes,
He said Dirty was only gonna record. He had to take most of Dirty's first takes, right? So if he re-recorded something, it was gonna be different than what he did before. You know what I'm saying? Like he never
yeah,
gonna spit the same verse the same way. So
I
you
love
had
that.
those mistakes though people fell in love with. And one of the big examples that he brought up was like, Kanye's car wreck and how that changed his vocal. Said same thing with, 50 Cent being shot or whatever, and how that changed his vocal, his slur, and his delivery. And it actually made them, I don't want to say better, but made them a lot more palatable to larger audiences because now you
Yeah,
have almost this southern drawl and slur when it comes to 50, and Kanye
yeah,
was able to find some things in his style as well due to the
yeah,
accident. And to your point, the College Dropout is that moment where you see a producer like Kanye, who likes polished products and things like that, we saw later on, actually deal with imperfections and still make them work. Because, like you said, when you look at a technical end of things, yeah, Late Registration is a more polished product. My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, for sure. Like it doesn't have any mistakes. It might have some things you don't like as much, but
yeah.
not really many flaws in there. And sometimes, I don't want to say that takes away, but the parody and the personality of an album is defined by its flaws because nothing is perfect. Nobody's perfect. And I
Yeah.
think you see more personality in the College Dropout, from a production end, vocal end, the way it's arranged in those imperfections.
And I always come back to College Dropout way more than those other albums.
Mm,
I might go to Graduation. I don't go to Graduation as much as Dropout, but I would say for me, if I'm just putting in order just those first few albums of his, I would probably say I listen to Dropout the most, then probably Graduation, then Late Registration. And I actually don't, I really don't go to Twisted Fantasy um, that much. And it's not to say like I still hold that album in high regard, but there's just something, like you were saying, it's just something about that intangible, the thing that you can't explain with College Dropout. It just gives you that feeling, and it's a lot more. It's just something more relatable and down to earth with it, and it could be the mistakes, but there's just something about it that makes it special.
One thing that's special about this album and in relation to the other ones is you could tell that this was recorded over a course of time.
Mm-hmm.
And even with it being recorded over a course of time, it doesn't feel like any of these songs fall out of the loop of the theme. Something that I I won't say learned, but I guess it was brought back to my attention when I was watching, some of the documentaries that are on Kanye on Netflix. The one that Kuda did. And one of the parts he was talking to his mom, and this is while he was recording, and she was asking if he had an album title, and he was like, he didn't have an album title yet. And that was hard to believe because, again, I remember Ye when, around this time, he already had the late registration. I'm sorry, he had the college dropout, late registration, graduation, and good ass job was supposed
That's
to be the fourth
yeah.
album, whatever. So he had these things planned out. And I mean, I'm sure he was telling the truth to his mom, but the fact that he had these songs already in tow and didn't have an album yet, and then was able to come up with, in my personal opinion, the perfect album title. I think it is probably the best album title in his catalog. It's a statement. It
Yeah.
says a lot about him, and not only just him, but as far as what we knew of as hip hop and um, what a mainstream success in hip hop looked like, sounded like. Nobody was talking about the fact that either A, they went to college, and then the whole thing about dropping out to pursue your dreams. Like, even the whole
Mm.
notion of good music, getting out our dreams, that whole notion comes from the notion of being a college dropout, and he didn't drop out because he wasn't going to do anything with his life. He was dropping out, and even the skits and everything that you hear in this album are telling you, like, look, I see the need in this, but I believe in myself more. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm investing in myself. I believe in myself to the point where I'm gonna go all out and go against everything that, my mother's an educator and all of that. I'm gonna go against all those things to believe in myself, and this is the product of it. So I think the College Dropout not only was a bold statement, great theme. I think it's the best album title of his catalog as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree. I'm trying to think
Late
of the other titles.
Registration,
Yeah.
Graduation, Yeezus, 808s and Heartbreaks, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, The Life of
Life of Pablo.
Pablo, Donda. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
That's easy.
It sets such a tone, and it's
Yeah.
and like I said before, and well, in our offline conversations, nobody would have produced this album for him.
Right.
And this is the first time we're covering an album where the artist produced.
Yeah.
So that makes
Yeah.
it different in itself as well. And so let's start it off from the intro. Um, First of all, I think the skits on this album are underrated.
You think so?
Usually, yeah, yeah, I think, well, I like the skits on Late Registration too, but they're funny, they're meaningful, they're connecting, they connect to the songs. Now, some of the ones in the beginning, I get it. I like the skits that are towards the end a little bit better. But I love how this album starts off with "We Don't Care." I think that sets a tone, an incredible
Yeah.
tone. Um,
Yeah.
well produced. Okay, so that was a sample of Castro Bunch's "I Just Want to Stop."
Stop. Yeah.
Um, One thing that we learned while we were doing some research on this album is the fact that many of these samples, to skate around and not getting any percentage or any publishing or whatnot, a lot of these samples were replayed. And so one thing that I learned in the research of this is the fact that many of these samples aren't outright samples for clearance. They were replayed and submitted as covers or interpolations, which is a whole
Revelations.
different, yeah, which is a whole different process, and it makes it a lot easier for the samples to get cleared or interpolations to get cleared. The clearance
Yeah.
process for covers and interpolations is a lot less messy than the clearance process of just sampling straight up recording. So, because basically, when you're taking someone's recording, you're literally taking their recording, their publishing, and things of that nature, right? But when you're re
Mhm.
recording it, then you have that ownership of that re recording. Did I explain that all right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's pretty much it.
So I'm not sure if this one was a replay situation, but one of the things that we got in this research is the fact that Ken Lewis, who was a studio musician and vocalist, he did a lot of things in the background on this.
Yeah,
He was in charge of replaying a lot of these things. And can you speak to some of the things that Ken Lewis, I guess, brought to light?
yeah. He didn't. So with this first track, this was a straight
This is a
sample, but
straight up
then
sample. Okay.
yeah, but when we get to All Falls Down, that's definitely
Okay.
replayed and has a lot of stories behind it. But yeah, Ken Lewis, he was talking about um, his process of not only of replaying some of these things, but also Kanye's thought process behind the why with playing some of these things. And a lot of times with interpolations, what impresses me is the ability, if you're able to replay it and still capture the feel of the original sample. It's really hard to do. And for me, another album that comes to mind always is Dr. Dre's Chronic 2001, because pretty much that entire album are interpolations. And it's really tough to pull off because there's something about, obviously, when you sample something, you're you're really wanting to take the feel of it. You're really wanting to take the vibe from it, and all of that encompasses. And so, what Ken Lewis was talking about was there were times where, and we'll talk about it later with, for example, Family Business, which is an interpolation. The sample was it's a piano sample that dun, 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 dun. The
Mm-hmm.
sample was out of tune. It's actually the piano is out of tune in the actual song, and that's one of those moments where they could have easily replayed it, but played it in tune. But it was Kanye's decision to to tweak the piano, whatever piano they played it on. They tweaked it out of tune so
Mm-hmm.
that they could get it exactly right and exactly how it was played on the sample. And to me, it's that level of detail that we don't really think about, and we wouldn't think about, and we wouldn't necessarily know how to articulate it. We as the listeners would just say, "Man, some ain't right about it," or I don't really feel it. It doesn't really kind of lack something. I can't put my finger on it,
Yeah.
but it's those details that in those instincts that Kanye has as a producer, as an artist, that go unspoken, and it's super important to not only this project, but obviously the projects that followed it.
The overall piece. I mean, and I've talked about this on the show before, man. I give higher marks to producers that are able to make full albums. I mean, if we do the same thing with our artists, I don't see why we can't judge the producers by the same light, right? Like, if you're able to go out there with spot production, Timbaland was the conversation. Like, Timbaland has yet to give us a great produced hip hop album. So you got some dope hip hop singles out there, but what makes you different than the rapper or the artist or whoever who goes out there and makes dope singles but can't make a full album? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can't put
Well, and
me
I
over that person that can make full albums.
and I'm gonna stick in the side for you because I feel like people got to hear that and be like, "What about Missy Elliott?" And I think you and I both agree that Missy's albums, while they're great, so are more fusion, more R&B fusion, and not like straight up hip
Yeah,
hop, as opposed to like someone like Pharrell, who's produced all Eclipse's albums,
hell have no
and
fury.
yeah,
I
in a
mean, let's be
classic
honest, man. If we're talking about, and I'm not talking about like Billboard and these guys or whatever, if we're being honest and we're talking about all the great hip hop albums, we're not going to mention Missy albums, not because the Missy albums aren't great. It's because we don't view them as hip hop albums, to be honest. Like I said, they're a hybrid of R&B and hip hop, which is dope and which is needed. And if we had a conversation about, hip hop and R&B meshes and hybrids and stuff, it's definitely in there. But if we're just talking about a straight up hip hop album like this one is, or like you said, Hell Hath No Fury is, I feel like if you're a great hip hop producer, you have to have in a project that you handle end to end, that we could sit there and say this project is held high, whether it's for the artist or the production. Because again, when I look at Organized Noise's involvement in production on Soul Food, I
Mm-hmm.
think they did an incredible job, even though Goody Mob wasn't carried by the beats per se. I think that Organized Noise did a great job of stepping back a little bit and being more of a backdrop and letting these guys tell their story. Because they
Yeah.
show on Southern Playalistic that they could dominate the sound. Because they're the
Right.
MVP of Southern Playalistic, in my opinion. Organized
Yeah.
Noise. They did their thing on that album.
Talk about it.
But anyway, going back to this,
I
and I think we got
digress.
to we got to set that backdrop, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And why
Yeah.
this stuff
Yeah.
is important. And I think for Kanye to start the album off with a notion like "We Don't Care" was important because we all knew Kanye at the time for the soul samples and the sped up samples. And back then, if you get an album, I mean, it wasn't no digital downloads like that. You're getting an album, you're putting it in your car. He wants you to identify sonically with what you came here to get. You know what I'm saying? Like you getting what you paid
Yeah.
for on this first song. And I think We Don't Care is a great opener, but I'm just talking about from a production standpoint, it's a little bit more palatable to what we're used to from Kanye West at that time as a producer, producing for other artists.
Absolutely. And I think about the great intros of the genre. Like I think about Dynasty intro comes to mind,
Hmm.
or not intros, but like opening songs.
Opening
Because sometimes,
songs. Hmm.
yeah, um, obviously New York State of Mind comes to mind. Ambitions of a Rider comes to mind. What Up Gangsta comes to mind.
Yeah.
Stillmatic intro comes to mind.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's all about setting the tone. And this song is so Kanye in that way, and it sets the tone for who he is and what we're about to get into. This ain't no gangster shit. You know what I'm saying? But what it is gonna be is soulful. It's gonna be humorous. We're gonna touch on social issues, but in a way that's palatable. He sets all of that up
You're right.
right from the gate.
He does
We
say like what you're about to witness is so you know what I'm saying? So he
Yeah,
set this song up to be the first song.
yeah, yeah. And the other thing that I'm a fan of, and he does this in a couple of songs. And I may, because Kanye, I'm a pause this for a second. Kanye has a lot of different styles, and so I'm gonna try to point out a lot of the different techniques and things that he uses that's like I just think are dope, and we don't talk about enough when it comes to this era of his production. And so one of the things that he does from a song structural standpoint that I love, he has this way of building the songs just through the hooks. And so in We Don't Care, I love how the first chorus is just Kanye. Drug dealing just to get by, stacking money till it gets sky. It's just him. The
Mhm.
second chorus, kids sing, kids sing. The kids sing the second half of the chorus. By the time we get to the third chorus, the kids have taken over the whole song. I think something just as simple as that, just the thought, like it could have easily just been the kids on the hook, or it could have easily just been Kanye on the hook. But everything is for a reason. There's a progression that goes. And for me, my favorite songs are the songs that take you somewhere.
Mhm.
And you do that through the arrangement and the structure. And something as simple as changing who does and he does this, pardon me, he does this a few times on this album.
Mhm.
Um, I think that too lends itself to the intro as to what we're getting ourselves into, even from a song structural standpoint, there's a lot of places of where the production is unorthodox. The structure of the song is very unorthodox for hip hop. You find a lot of the song structure that he has, he borrows from rock and he borrows from soul and R&B. But if, on a hip hop level, he could have just kept it 16 bar chorus or 16 bar verses, 4 to 8 bar hooks, whatever, and just kept it simple. And he's letting us know off the bat that this ain't that.
And I want to, yeah, I want to go back to something you said because that's what makes Kanye a producer, right? And I don't think that he had the opportunity to really show how he could be a producer in this genre before his own effort because before that, people just wanted beats from him. We always talk about beatmaker versus producer or whatever. And the work that he was doing on the Blueprint, let's be honest. I mean, he was chiming in and helping with hooks and background vocals and things like that. But nothing, like you said, is structured as what you were just talking about and having
Yeah,
an opportunity to do so. And so this is his first time to really flex the fact that, look, I'm in the production. And to be perfectly honest, for the most part, we don't have a lot of real producers in hip hop. We have a lot of beat makers, and it's not a
right.
bad thing because beat making is dope. You know what I'm saying? We've had classic albums based on just beats and rhymes. That's what
Yeah,
the genre calls for a lot of the times. But the fact that he was holding in these gifts, and I don't want to say holding it back for himself because I'm sure at some point when he was trying to sell his production, he was trying to sell people on some of these ideals. They just didn't get it. You know, I think this album is so special in the fact, from a producer and artist standpoint, and we're going to get to this when we get to All Falls Down and some of the other records, is a lot of the things that we were told back then wouldn't work in this genre, don't work in this genre. He was able to actually put on full display
mhm.
and show the industry that yeah, this can work. I'm sure that same technique that you were just talking about with the hook that he did on We Don't Care, he probably had pitched to somebody at some point and they like, nah man, what are you talking about? We ain't doing all that. And they
Right.
just
You're doing
wanted,
too much.
imagine that, man. Imagine you have all of these ideas and people only just want half of what you're able to offer. They just wanted beats from him.
Yeah,
They didn't want anything else. They didn't want concepts. They didn't want, structure. And these people had all the resources to bring in all kind of choirs, orchestras, and everything. All the things that we saw him do, other artists could have had these things. You know what I'm saying? Like
yo, that's
they didn't want it.
crazy.
They didn't want any of this stuff. They've heard these songs and everything. Like they didn't want any of this stuff. They wanted just they just wanted
They just-
3% of what this person could do, and they were willing to pay for it. And then I'm so glad that he doubled down on his own instincts and said, "No, I'm making this album." That's an
yeah,
artist. That's a true producer.
yeah.
To your point
Well, and
though, he actually introed and outroed this song as well. So this song kind of
yeah,
fits in a grand scheme as in a play type of sense, kind of an act
yeah,
one type
yeah,
thing. Make a song for the kids. Boom, here's the kids, and the kids were a big part of that record. He's speaking to the kids on there too.
yeah, yeah. No, that's it's so funny, man.
It's
And
so
it's
nuts.
there's a story of him. There's a story that I think Ken Lewis tells where he was in a session. He was in a mixing session for I think a Bleak song, and he wasn't even he wasn't even active in the session. Like he was on the couch, just letting them do what they do, and it sort of makes me sort of realize that like he didn't even give for these hits that he gave these artists. He didn't even put in half the work. He is not to say that he didn't care, but he literally didn't have to even think about it. He didn't put in half the effort for these hits. And you can say what you want, but I don't know. That's so incredible to me.
It is incredible. I mean, it's even watching that documentary, because I keep going back to that because it's real time, right? This is real footage from that era. It kind of takes you back to that era too, with the grainy type of texture that the video has. But you could check the body language and everything. It shows him in the studios, in these sessions or whatever, with Nappy Roots, and where he was kind of making beats to kind of just basically fund this project. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
And he's
right.
in there, kind of disengaged, like giving the person their beats, listening, or you know what I'm saying? Like, but when he's in the studio with this stuff, you could see the creative juices flowing, and you could see the energy. And it wasn't like he was saving, all of that for himself per se. It was just the fact that, like you said, they didn't want half of what he was able to offer.
Yeah,
And when you think
yeah,
about the songs that came out before this project, it's hard to even think of one that even has a tenth of what some of this stuff has.
yeah,
I'm trying to think. The Dilated Pupils song, "I Can't Live My Life," feels like it could have
yeah,
fit on this album somewhere, and "Just
yeah,
to Get By" has a lot of elements
yeah.
too.
Goodbye.
But you could tell that at that time, these artists were probably a little bit more inclined to listen to him based on the numbers that he was able to drive from the J stuff,
Right.
based on some of the numbers that these are artists who were probably gold and below type of artists, so they were going to
Yeah,
listen to him a little bit more.
yeah.
Yeah. But I think this is a good transition to All Falls Down, because that was one of the ones that always stood out in that documentary, where he actually walked around Rockefeller offices and was playing the song, rapping the song,
Mhm.
and people were literally looking at him like he was crazy. That's the climate in hip hop in 2002 and 2003. Everybody wanted to hear basically the same thing. And that's why it was
Yeah,
so funny hearing Jadakiss talk about, don't go out here and sound like the same person. I don't want to hear a whole bunch of rappers making not like us over and over again. I'm like, in that era in the early 2000s, everybody sounded the same. Everybody had the same production. Everybody was rapping about the
mhm.
same things on
About
records.
the same thing.
And
Yeah,
I could be honest, as a person who was coming out of the 90s and a hip hop fan, I was very bored with hip hop in 2001, 2002,
hmm
2003, 2004. And I know a lot of people look back at it now in nostalgia, but in the grand scheme of things, we saw some of our favorite artists basically, dumbing it down. You know what I'm saying? Making the same. It was boring. It was boring. And
yeah,
somebody comes with some fresh ideas like this. It's so foreign to people's ears. Like, I think they looked at him like they didn't know what to
yeah. And didn't know what to do.
think.
It's funny. It's funny. So it all falls down. He said he wrote that in 15 minutes. And I think what he's referring to, though, because there are different versions of it. I think the initial demo of it was written in 15 minutes, and of course he revised it along the way. But the interesting thing that I read on this was he was saying that Dead Prez, it was actually Dead Prez that showed him how to make raps with the message sound cool,
Mm.
and why he was able to make a song, to be able to write a song like All Falls Down. Um, All Falls Down is an interpolation. Uh, Personally, I like the interpolation better. I think Selena Johnson's contribution to it, because Selena Johnson's contribution took it up a level. It took the energy to a different place than the original version, in my opinion,
I agree.
because she was able. He sort of allowed her, like he had her sing, like re-sing the sample as we heard it, but then gave her a couple passes to just do her own thing, and so that's where we get the "Oh, what in the all of
Mhm.
that, and it just gave it a different energy. It gave it a different feel in a way that made it feel slightly more upbeat. And because I don't know, I honestly don't know. I don't know if I heard it as a single, as it in its original state.
Hmm.
I think obviously we know what the song is now, but I'm trying to think if I
Yeah,
were listening to that with fresh ears at that time, as it was, I don't know if I would have felt it was a single just because of the energy of it.
yeah,
I don't know. It's hard to say. Um, but
yeah.
the thing,
Because it can't really compare it to too much before it.
yeah, yeah. Um, I do find the other interesting aspect to this, with it being interpolated, being replayed by Ken Lewis, was he tells this story about how um, he went to, I guess he went to Guitar Center. Is either ready? No, I think it was
Yeah,
Guitar
he said
Center.
Guitar Center. Yeah.
Yeah, and he tested out all of the guitars or whatever, and whatever guitar that they had replayed on it,
Hmm.
he had him recall that record, and it was the difference between I think this I think the and this is like some technical shit, but I
Hmm.
think it was nylon, like a nylon string guitar, and he said what the record needed were like steel
Uh,
string guitars, something like that. Just something like that small, something that you would think is not a big deal,
it's a huge.
made all the different is a
Yeah.
huge deal. And I guess when everybody heard it, it was like, oh shit, yeah, that was good look on that. that was a major difference maker.
Well, what I was looking up right here, and I'm still looking it up. The only song that I could think about that I mean, as a single, and I'm thinking acoustic guitars and soulful vocals, that I could think about comparing this to would be Method Man's "Makeups to Breakups" or whatnot with
Mm,
Angelo. I think it's "Breakups" to make one of the two.
yeah.
And I wanted to see who produced that, and it says Karan Goodman and Trackmasters.
Okay.
Um, and there are a couple of acoustic choices out there as well, but no, like you said, it's hard to even compare this to any other single, to think that a single in 2004 specifically would work
Right.
in this nature. It was definitely more about the substance of it all. Now, this is sampled from Lauryn Hill's what is it, Mystery of Iniquity, from her
Yep.
Unplugged. And I'm gonna be honest, man. Like, and for the people who've heard "Mystery of Iniquity," I mean, Lauren has an incredible rap verse on there, but I don't hear that little section and say, you know what, I'm gonna make a song out of it. And when you went
Yeah.
to that melody, I'm like, man, that melody's great. He heard that and said, no, we're taking that part. And initially, and this was the talk back in the day, because it was on his mixtape before the album, the one with Lauren. They were saying that Lauren didn't clear it. I don't know how true that is, and they had to get Selena to redo it. And again, this is back to what we were talking about at the top of the show. Redoing samples and covers being easier, and interpolations being easier to get clear. And like you said, this one worked out in their favor for sure. Because I agree with you. I think the Selena Johnson version is much better. Um, I don't know if they would have, if the Lauren thing would have went through seamlessly, if they would have went with that. But again, you would have had to have Lauren involved, and I'm sure there would have been a point situation there. And when you're performing
Sure.
it, Lauren's not going to come out there. Is it really featuring Lauren Hill, or is it just sampling Lauren Hill? So I
Right.
think that it just made a lot more sense to go with Selena. She did a great job of, like you said, still giving that feel and soulfulness and the rawness from Lauren's Unplugged. Because again, Lauren's Unplugged was far from perfect, and she was like,
Right.
she had out of tune guitars, cracking vocals, and
Yeah.
she was able to still give you that feel. Selena
Yeah.
was, and still be able to polish that up a little bit. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think that was a great singles choice because again, these singles on this album, when you look at it, Through the Wire, All Falls Down, Jesus Walks, these singles had personality and messages and messaging. You know,
Mhm.
slow
Right.
jams, not as much. It had a lot of personality to it, and I think that's a whole different thing. We're going to talk about that when we get to it. But I think this being a single, made sense in the scope of what this album and this artist is conveying, and it worked.
Yeah.
You could tell that
Absolutely.
he was really high on this song early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was really high in this song and Jesus Walks, and we'll get to that. We'll get to that when we get to it. But you gotta admire the confidence that he has. Like when he knows something is gonna work, he's betting the house on it. And
Yeah, having confidence in stuff that hasn't worked before.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
that's
yeah,
the thing. A lot of people call themselves professionals, especially in this business, in the music industry. It's like you don't really know what's going to work. You know what you think's going to work based on what you've seen work. You know what I'm saying? So all that is
right,
just copy and paste if we're being real about it. You know what I mean?
right.
But to be able to see something that's going to work that hasn't been proven yet, that takes a lot of vision and that takes a lot of guts.
Yeah, yeah,
And if it wasn't for his production skill and talent, he wouldn't have been able to fund this either because nobody was going to put money behind this stuff but him.
right, right, right.
Had to shoot his own video to even get his own label to give him a date. It's
To give
fucking
him,
crazy.
yeah, that's
It's
crazy,
fucking crazy.
crazy, just to get a budget.
Yeah, on a label that's putting out PD crack. No disrespect, but you know what I'm saying. Like it's not like everybody they putting out dropping classics or something. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right, right, right.
I, anyway, Spaceships will be the next song. I mean, we're gonna kind of skip over some of the interludes. Are you okay with skipping
Yeah,
over the I'll
yeah,
Fly?
yeah,
All right.
yeah,
Now, you and I had a conversation. I was talking about 3/4 time. Some people know it as 6/8 time for our music people out there. Basically, most hip hop songs or most popular culture songs are 4/4, which would be four beats in a measure. If I'm talking in music terms, like people already know what I'm talking about. But basically, you're clapping 4 times each time that a measure happens, right?
well
Now,
explained.
yeah, I guess it's well explained. I'm not a music teacher. I just, I'm a musician. I need to brush it up on my music teaching explanations. You teach music, so maybe you can explain it better. Um, and so you and I were talking, and I was telling you that Dungeon Family's Excalibur was one of the only songs in hip hop that I heard in 3/4 time. And doing the research on this, I didn't realize that, yeah, Spaceships is in 6/8 3/4 whatever as well. He didn't change up the Distant Lover sample to make it fit into the 4/4 measuring time, and so he just ran with that. And then you brought to my attention that he did this on Champions and stuff too, and I'm like, you're right.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
being able to adjust to that flow,
yeah,
it's like to give people, I guess, an example of what I'm talking about. When you listen to Spaceship, it'll be 1 2 3 2 2 3 3 2 3 4 2 3, as opposed to if it's Jesus Walks, it's like 1 2 3 4 2 2 3 4 3 2 3 4.
yeah,
So yeah, being able to execute on that and to rhyme on that, it's interesting because when someone's rhyming on that 3/4 time, it's almost like only one style you can use.
yeah,
It's a few styles. It's very limited in the styles that you're able to use flow wise. Because I think about how Gip was rhyming on Excalibur. It's very similar to how they're rhyming on Spaceships, GLC
yeah,
Consequence and Yay. And I mean, it's a dope trick to pull once or twice, but you don't want to
right,
continuously do it because flow wise, you'll end up sounding repetitious and like you're going with the same flow. But I thought that Spaceships, they knocked it out the park. Quick story about Spaceships. I didn't realize that they had a music video for this until like a couple of years ago.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was great too. It
When and I don't want to say why. I'm sure he had to shoot this because nobody believed. But Spaceships could have easily been a single as well.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the Distant Lover choice I thought was brilliant. Marvin Gaye, Distant Lover, for those that don't know, and that the way he was able to freak that bass line, that do no no
Yeah.
no, crazy,
Yeah. Yeah.
crazy.
The couple of things that stick out to me, similar to Illmatic, we put unknown features up early.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And it's funny, Consequence in his verse, he was talking about not blowing an opportunity that he had, but an opportunity that didn't go right, and he was back to doing what he had to do. But yeah, this idea of putting these unknown guys up front so that they can be heard, regardless, how deep you get into the album, he sort of made sure that they had a chance to be heard, which I thought was dope. The other thing that I love about this song, going back to some of his production styles and techniques, he has this thing where he pardon me, he has a 16th, he does this 16th notes, I think it's 16th notes, it's either 8th notes or 16th notes with his kicks. And so I don't know if you remember the song that comes to mind, Freeway, when you hear the song, will
oh
you
yeah,
cry? And the drums go, you know what I'm saying? Just something as simple as that. That's a Kanye thing. And he does that, again, like he does that in a few songs, but this is one of those where if you listen to just the drum pattern on this song and just throughout the album, um, Kanye got a lot of flack for how the drums were mixed on this album. Like they don't or didn't knock necessarily like say like a Just Blaze track, but his drum patterns are crazy. Just like
yeah,
what the drums are actually doing, crazy. And this is
I
one of
agree.
those songs like if you just solo out the drums and just listen to what the drums are doing. Like he has them stacked. He got the I think the hi-hat is like it like just I can't say enough about the drum patterns on this album, and this is a great example of
One of the other things that I remember this standing out when the song came out, my producer, shout out to Art, he was, when we would listen to this album, like that whole line of, what you know about, making 100 beats and over 3 summers, that's a different world, like 3 summers. It's like
that.
he was able to speak to the grind of producers. And I don't think that we ever really heard a producer slash rapper even speak about those things on wax to that degree. Like when
Yeah,
producers get on the track, it's always been one of those things where you even flexing the fact that I rap and I produce, or my beats is hot and this and that, but you never
yeah, hmm
really hear producers articulate, what I'm saying, the grind of a producer, especially in that era, because, in the 2000s era, that whole grind changed a bit. You know what I mean? You shopping beats and things like that now that might not have been that much of a reality, 10 to 15 years before that. But yeah, I just thought that, Spaceship is just one of those songs that it speaks to the struggles, and along with just having that uplifting feel, he's always had that
yeah,
inspirational backdrop. It's like, I can do this, I did this. And yeah, he was kind of first to the table with that. I mean, correct me in the
yeah,
comments if I'm wrong, but yeah,
yeah,
he connected, and it's about connectivity, and he was able to connect to people who weren't getting reached out to in hip
yeah,
hop. I think that's definitely special for sure. Um, and then from there we go. Jesus Walks. He preps all of these songs. I don't want to talk about interludes, right? He preps We Don't Care. He doesn't really prep you too much for All Falls Down. That kind of just drops. And I always thought it was interesting that Jesus Walks didn't come right after the I'll Fly Away thing, since that's more of a church hymn.
yeah.
And I never
Yeah,
understood why that was the case. I almost thought that, to some degree that was in error. You know what I mean?
yeah,
You would think
yeah,
it would make more sense for, I'll fly away and then go right into Jesus Walks, right? Why do you think he
yeah.
made that choice?
The only thing I can think of is from a narrative standpoint, if just the idea of a spaceship flying away, I'll fly
Okay.
away is serving as a intro to that. Um, you know, that's really the only thing. But I'm with you. I'll fly away just being such a well known sort of gospel hymn.
Yeah.
You would think that it would probably flow perfect, or if it was a thing where if Jesus Walks came first, followed by I'll Fly Away, going into Spaceship, um, that could make sense just from a narrative standpoint too. But
But Spaceship
um,
had to come before it,
yeah,
like you
yeah,
said.
no, absolutely, absolutely. But that's the only thing I can think of.
Well, Jesus Walks is next. Jesus Walks, I think, is a top 50 hip hop song of all time. There's a lot to say about this record. He so many places we can go with this. This was a very important record for him. It was a very important record for the time.
Mhm.
Jay-Z even said that it's his most important record next to, well, he said Big Brother is his most important next to Jesus Walks. That's what Jay-Z. I'll never forget. He said this on 106 in Park. I was like, wow, brother. Anyway, so he's
That's funny.
watching him work on Jesus Walks is very, very interesting, man. The sample itself, I don't know where you even begin to, let me say this, because it's so much to start with. I'm going to start here. He clearly was listening to this music for listening pleasure as opposed to saying, I got to go find a sample of such and such. He's heard
Right.
this record from Art Choir, Walk With Me, before. And I believe, I don't think this is one of those things where you're like, I got to make a song about Jesus. Let me go try to find some gospel samples because you're gonna be going through a whole lot. There's a lot out there, and there's not a lot of gospel samples used in the hip hop genre. The only one I can think of off the top of my head was the Evils from DJ Premier on
Mhm.
Reasonable Doubt for Jay. Um, saying all that to say, this was an inspired piece, and this is something that he once again was able to hear something in, and I think it's perfect. It's that boom boom boom, but I mean it's it's like when you hear it now you're like, yeah, why wouldn't somebody use this? But to be able to
Yeah.
make this the piece that he made, it's incredible production, it's incredible insight, it's an incredible message. My question, though, just seeing how it was recorded, was I know everybody always goes to the whole Rhyme Fest thing. Was Rhyme Fest? He played this beat for Rhyme Fest. They recorded it together.
I think so.
Um, I think so. Yeah, I saw him recording it, but I don't know if they recorded it for a Rhyme Fest project or if this was, always known that Kanye was going to keep this.
Yeah.
Um, Did he take variations of what Ron Fest was doing and created his own, or did he just copy, Ron Fest's bars word for word? Is there like a? Is
I
there?
think he,
Go ahead.
yeah, I think he took it word for word.
Okay.
I think, and I mean, I would love if anyone in the comments knows this part of it, but I want to say it was their song
Yeah.
together, and eventually in the process, it seemed to make more sense for it to be a solo Kanye song, and he but kept the writing on it, kept Ron Fest's writing, kept his bars on it. I
Yeah.
think that's what it was, and it's one of those things that that's a hard decision to make. That's a tough decision. Like just from an emotional standpoint, like I'm sure this is his boy, and you understand that this could be a big record. How do you tell your boy, I gotta take you off of this record? But
Yeah,
um,
and one thing that we don't know, and I don't know if it's revisionist history from all accounts now, but we don't know how much. Um, we don't know how much Ron Fest believed in this song. It could have been a whole lot. Could have been like, whatever, keep the song for yourself,
sure,
whatever. Because we saw what Scarface's reaction was when Kanye tried to get him on the record. Like, he kind of was saying, this is hard, but almost in a way of like, all right, I like this, we'll go to the next song type of thing.
yeah,
Because he wanted to
yeah,
get Scarface on the hook.
mm-hmm,
And I don't really know how that would have worked. Really, I do believe that Kanye was smart enough as a producer where I don't feel like it would have worked against him in any kind of way. I think it probably would have been more of a, Slick Rick, Biz Markie, and Q-Tip thing on Girls, Girls, Girls type of situation, right?
sure,
Where
sure,
you're able to just add a person who has, a strong voice and a unique voice onto, what was going on. But I think it
yeah,
worked out perfectly. But saying all that to say, like, I don't. I mean, we would have to hear from Ron Fest or people who were around at that time to see, what that feeling was like. But you're right. I mean, that's a production choice. I think it was the right choice to, have him head up this song by himself.
yeah,
I mean, hopefully everybody got taken care of in the situation. I haven't heard otherwise, but yeah, I mean, it does seem like it does change the dynamic if this is not a solo song.
yeah, absolutely,
Um,
absolutely,
it wasn't a given that a song like this would work. Especially again that time frame that it was put out there. These are game changing situations. I was reading in the comments and some of the research that I was doing. People were like, "Man, he wasn't making songs; he was making history," and that's true. I mean, these are things that it's easy to look back on it if you weren't there and say, okay, well, that's not all that special, but things weren't. It's a game changer, man. Like things are so
mm-hmm,
different. I say this all the time about people who don't love the Beatles like that. I'm like, you just have to kind of understand what was before that to really understand how pivotal and great and groundbreaking the work that this group did. And I think
yeah,
this song is indicative of that. This project is indicative of that. But yeah, Jesus Walks is and was a big deal. It wasn't one of my personal favorites. I mean, just off listen, but when you think
same,
about the message and the fact that, a rapper could rap about anything except for
yeah,
Jesus. That's such a
yeah,
crazy statement, but it's real. Like we
yeah,
were hearing rappers rap about anything, any
right,
given thing.
anything,
And
literally,
and once again, this goes back to that notion that he went out here and executed on things that people said wouldn't work. This one clearly worked, but imagine people in offices sitting here telling you that we can't put out a record about Jesus, even though that's your belief system and
right,
that is the belief system of the country at large. But if you want to go out there and talk about bitches, hoes, drugs, and how much drugs you sold, and
that's
and
crazy,
fucking niggas up, we could talk about that. We could put that out there.
that's crazy,
But if you want to rap
crazy,
about something positive and good and something spiritual, we can't put that out there. And that's it's a
which
wild
is
thing.
it
It's a
still
real
holds true
thing.
today. It
It
still
does.
holds true today. Yeah,
You know what used to kill me, man? Sidebar. Here in Atlanta, some of the radio personalities. It was like some of the morning shows. I don't want to call anybody out, but whenever something tragic would happen, like a rapper get killed and this and that, or whatever would happen, they would have these specials about what's wrong with hip hop and this and that. And I'm like, you guys play this music all the time. You're not out here playing. You're not out here playing Talib Kweli. You're not out here playing the stuff that has the positive message, but the stuff that has the message indicative of the things that you're talking about in
yeah, man.
negativity. Now, you play
Talk
ad
that shit.
nauseum, and when this conversation is over, you're gonna start back playing them every day again. Like
Talk
it's
that shit.
crazy. It's crazy.
Talk that shit, boy.
Yeah, they want to sit here and talk about the problems, but you are the problem. It's wild, man. And I'm glad that somebody had the guts to go out here and try to change the narratives. With a song like this, and all this. I mean, I know we're talking about messaging. We're talking about the song altogether, but all of those things are production choices. Like I said in the beginning, nobody else would have produced this for this guy.
Yeah,
Nobody.
yeah. And it's the fact that he knew this was the crown jewel
He did.
of the project. Like he knew, like, and he put the house on it, and that man,
He
like
shot
that,
3 videos for it.
which is insane.
He told Kuda on the DVD back, well, on the Netflix documentary, which was DVD back then.
Yeah,
He told him like, man, no offense, man, you my guy, you my videographer, but I gotta have Hype Williams do this one, man. I gotta have Hype Williams direct this video
yeah.
because it's got to be big.
Well, and I see it.
Yeah,
I see why he would. I understand why he felt that way. And it's not a knock. It's not a knock. And Cootie ended up doing the third one.
which is my favorite one.
It's my favorite one. Yeah, that was my favorite one. That was my favorite one.
Again, it's sometimes simplicity is that it hits that core. I mean, it had the concept. I don't think Kanye was big enough yet for somebody like Hype Williams to really dig into what he was directing at the time. Whereas somebody like Cootie understood it and he was around it, and there was a lot of, I don't want to say effort, but yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of effort that was put into that. Russell Simmons once said, he was like, I know that the Triumph video for Wu-Tang has the big budget and all of that, but it's not the Cream video. The Cream video is much better. It's raw. It's like it didn't take all that money. And that's the funny thing about hip hop, rock and roll and stuff like that. It's like, man, sometimes the most bare bone projects and bare bone situations are the greatness.
Yeah.
Most of my favorite albums in hip hop didn't sell a whole bunch of records.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is what it is. Never Let Me Down's next.
Oh,
I like the fact that they went from Jesus Walks to Never Let Me Down. I think that transition is one of the stronger transitions on the whole album. That whole with me, with doom, and then just
oh baby. Man.
I got a few things to say about this record.
Yeah. We may have to do like a part 1 and part 2 on this because
listen, this is where I want to start, man. And somebody pointed this out to me years later. I didn't realize these were verses from the Hobie Baby remix.
Yeah.
And the fact that Jay-Z didn't even take the time, which we know at this juncture in Jay's career, it didn't take much time at all, but take the time to actually craft out new verses for Kanye West's project lets you know how involved or lack thereof that he was in this project. And maybe that's why Kanye let him do that, so that it could be very evident that, yo, you didn't even give me new verses, and I give it a pass because these are incredible verses. You know what I'm saying? But I'm trying to think of any moment ever that I can think of when Jay-Z said the same verse twice. I can't think of any. Now, again, maybe this was something that Kanye wanted. I doubt that Kanye would sit there and say, yo, them verses on the Hobie Baby remix, save them for my album. I don't know. You know what I mean? But I don't even know if he was he in any of these sessions? Do we have any like footage of him in these sessions recording this song?
No, not on the Netflix doc, not on YouTube. You know what I mean? And there's a video of him playing just the first version of this song to Pharrell with
Yeah.
Jay's verses on it. But and Kanye's verses wasn't even on it at the time. So yeah, no, it goes to show what he was up against, what Kanye
Hmm.
was up against, even within his own family.
No support.
Zero support. Um, this is to me. I think this is the best produced song on this album.
Okay.
Um, that's just my own
I
opinion.
can see
Uh,
that.
it's an interpolation. So the melody that's saying when it comes, or the high pitch melody that you hear underneath Jay is actually sung by Ken Lewis,
Mm.
uh, and they pitched it up. This is one of those songs going back to "We Don't Care," where the hook does one thing. It's sung by the women at first, and then by the time we get to the end, he takes it to a choir. It's a choir that's singing. Just structurally, four verses. You got four verses on this. Two from Jay, one from Ye. And an incredible
Yeah.
scene stealing,
Incredible.
career making spoken word poem that I was trying to think, like, I've never heard, up to this point, I hadn't heard spoken word on a rap song in this way. Like, I think about, there's a interlude on Common's second album or third, One Day It All Makes Sense album.
You mean
I
like
think
the power of it? Because when I think of
how
it, I think of Big Rube, and every time the Dungeon
right.
family utilized Big Rube, it was more in laid back
Yes,
situations, like a liberation
yes,
or or a stank
yes,
glove or something like that. But yeah, this
exactly.
is like screaming at the mountaintops type of stuff.
This is used as the climax of the
Hmm.
song. And you're right, Big Rube. I think it was Malik Youssef on
Yeah.
Common's album. It was sort of, it seemed like it was typically used as either an intro or an outro or whatever, but more on the laid back tip. Whereas this poem, like, I get chills thinking about it, but this is the climax of the song, and this is ultimately what this song is about. And if I'm on the highest cliff, on the highest riff, and it's just like, Jesus Christ, I will never ever let you, in the energy and the intensity and the passion behind this. To me, that's the passion of Kanye. That's the passion that he embodies throughout this whole thing. It was just perfect. Um, I'm also a fan. I'm also a fan of the structure and arrangement of this song. And again, like, I like to kind of touch on, like, things that sometimes we take for granted that could just be seen looked at as like simple things, but like, um so I feel like this song in particular could be an engineer's worst nightmare. You got a choir, you got a sample, you have to make sure Jay's vocals are right. Of course, you got to make sure Kanye's vocals are right. You got just the instrumentation, where the bongos, and there's just so many elements to this song. Um, you got background vocal, like, there's so many elements that, as an engineer, where the hell do you start? Like, where do you even start leveling this off? And I think about, at the end of Jay's first verse, the full chorus comes in full at the full level, on top of Jay rapping his verse,
Hmm.
and which then takes us into Kanye's verse. Um, just something as simple as that, as opposed to Jay's verse ending, then we go into the chorus, then we go into Kanye's verse. It could have been that, but they found this way to sort of this sort of simple way to condense it just enough to where, because it's already a long song, you know what? Just put the chorus on top of the end of his verse. We can still hear what he's
Mm.
saying. It's still clear. And then we go straight into Kanye's verse, almost as if the same way you would on a posse cut.
That's
You just
smart.
go.
And I didn't even realize that they were doing that, but you're right. That's very smart. Very smart
It's
production
super
choice.
smart. It's super smart because you have to think about the length of the song. Like this could easily be a song. You could easily extend this to be, and it's already a long song, but it could have easily been longer.
It could have
But
easily been
just
like 8 minutes.
it could have easily been 8 minutes. But they did it in such a way to where they found the right places to condense it and to truncate it. On top of that, the vocal arrangements underneath, like in Kanye's verse, the ooh, and sort of giving it a build, giving it some sort of variation. It's just all of these small elements combined to make this song. For me, I've never, up to this point, I never heard a rap song arranged in this way.
Mm.
I can't think of a rap song that was arranged in this way. And like I can't say enough about it. On top of it, it's interpolated. They re-sang it. That's another set of problems that could have gone wrong. This song is so perfect to me.
You know, you might have sold me on that. I think this is probably the best produced song on this album. Now, my favorite song on this album is,
Yeah,
is Two Words, and that beat is
yeah,
insane. But
yeah,
but as
absolutely.
far as like you said, arrangement and best produced song on the album, I can go with this one being that. Um, Get 'em High is next. Get 'em High to me, it might be one of the more simpler beats or
Hmm.
production choices on there. I think the drums come from Dr. Dre's Explosive, but what this song does is something that Kanye's albums have been indicative of doing moving forward. This one was a platform for somebody else. This was Common's comeback. This is after, Electric Circus. People, kind of giving up on Common in a sense where they thought that, the whole Baduism had changed him so much that we lost the guy that we had before. I mean, he did this with Lupe Fiasco on Late Registration. That's Lupe's breakthrough. You know what I mean? Graduation. Some could say that that's Wayne's breakthrough. To a different demo. Obviously Nikki with My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, so on and so forth. But it starts here with Get 'em High, and him going back and forth with Talib, which was important too. But at the time, Talib was the established one, and we knew that Kanye was running around with Talib, and this is piggybacking off of Just to Get By. But to me, the stage was set for Common to do what he did on this verse to get
Yes,
them ready for what we were about to get from the two of these guys. And again, that's a production choice. In the same
yes,
way, I always talk about how Q-Tip set up Busta Rhymes on Scenario. He
yes,
set Busta Rhymes' career up on Scenario, and I think that from a production standpoint, I feel like Get 'Em High was made with the intent to give Common that platform to do what they ended up doing, man. And
yeah,
right after this, Common ended up signing the Good Music. They made Finding Forever, and so incredible production choice on that end.
yes, yeah. Nah, man, you hit it all. I think because this is one of the more simpler tracks, I I feel like this is one of the um, better mixed songs as far as the way it knocks, the way the beat bumps, because it's just simpler, and you can really kind of just focus on the kick and the snare and the bass that's underneath it. But
As far as the
um,
producer side of it too, not to interrupt you or cut you off, but I think that what this also shows is back to back. It shows that I can rap with Jay Z and I can rap with Talib Kweli in Common, back to back.
yeah,
Like
it's
me as an
crazy.
artist, you know what I'm saying? My flow is in the
Yeah,
pocket like Wallace. I had to bounce like Hydraulics and King Collar had to swerve like a. So it's like I'm showing that no, I'm not just some producer, and I think that was the initiative of this album too. that
Right.
even if I do have features, I want you to understand that I'm just not, some producer trying to rap and be carried by the rappers. And he's showing versatility back to back. I'm rhyming with Jay and I'm rhyming with Talib and Common. What else you want?
Right. Right. Right.
Workout Plan was always one of those that was criticized at the
It
time.
was.
And I don't think the Workout Plan is a bad song. I think that artists had responsibilities back then. And, to sell records, you had to cater to all audiences and to not look like that backpack guy or whatever. You had to make songs that the ladies were going to listen to and ladies were going to connect to as well. And I think that, especially with this coming back to back with slow jams, I felt like this was Kanye trying to or attempting to achieve that. In many ways, he did, and he went for it from a theme standpoint. They shot a video for this. This was a single
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So he's like, look, if I'm going to cater to the ladies, I'm gonna do it with a workout theme. Now, I do think that it's very, it has to be pointed out that auto tune was used in this, and I know a lot of people. Was this before T Pain? Trying to think, when did T
Yeah.
Pain really hit?
Yeah. Yeah. Because T Pain really didn't really hit like that until like '06, '05, '06, sometime
Because
around there.
I'm Sprung was T Pain's first single. '05, correct.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of people will point to T Pain and the fact that Kanye took T Pain's style with 808s and heartbreaks. But if we're being real here and we look at the timeline here, it is it is documented that the workout plan utilized autotune first. He actually utilized autotune in some of these interludes as well, even before that. So some could say that when he made 808s and Heartbreaks, he was doubling down on something that he was already using in the first place. So, if anything, and I know that T Pain says he got auto tune from, I want to say, Jennifer Lopez, either If You Want My Love or Waiting for the Night, one of those records,
Oh, I didn't know.
or was it, no, I think it was Cher's. Do You Believe in Love After Love? I think that's what he
Yeah.
got that from.
I didn't
So
know
yeah,
that. Okay.
but if we're talking about using it in hip hop, and if somebody want to get real technical with it, it could be argued that Kanye West used it first in that time span that auto tune started taking off, and the workout plan is that evidence. And we don't talk about that record enough because I think that in comparison to the rest of the songs and singles on this album, it just sticks out like a sore thumb. But it does have a purpose, and if
Yeah.
you have to make a record for the ladies, you're making it purpose driven. And I think he made a very interesting and dope production choice in even creating this.
Yeah. A couple of things to note with this one. This is the only song on the album that is not sampled. There's no sample.
Mm.
Um, all the violins were produced, written, arranged, and performed by Mary Ben Ari, who he did a lot of work with, and you know, really, really, I'm glad that he put her on in that way and really presented something. She's sort of known as the hip hop violinist, and like she played on pretty much all his records that have violin, most notably Overnight Celebrity.
Oh yeah.
But I would also say that explains why this is the most sampled song from this album. When people sample from Kanye, they sample like J. Cole did it with Workout.
Mm.
Um, there's a Sweetie song. I can't remember what it's called. And then there was another one that I saw, but it makes sense. This is the one song without a sample.
Mm.
Um, Also, the drums are crazy on this song. Like, say what you want about the concept and what he's rapping about. The beat's fire, man. The beat's
It
fire.
is. It
Like,
is.
I don't, what he did over the beat. You can argue, but the
It
beat's
shows his
crazy.
versatility, though. It really does.
Yeah, yeah. Like he does my kicks again. You know what I'm saying? But Um, yeah, it's a crazy concept, and I do believe that. Listen, man, if you have an idea, like go for that shit, man. Like take it as far as you can take it, and you can say whatever you want. He took this idea as far as you could take it.
He
You know what I'm
did.
saying? Like, like hell yeah, man. If you guys strike out, if you gotta go out swinging. You know what I mean? And he did, and I don't even think it's that bad a song because
No.
there there are people who actually really like this song. You know, do I play it all
Yeah.
the
And I think what he was able to do too, and not to cut you off, is like, to that point, he was able to show the labels that, okay, I gave you what you wanted here, because it kind of reminds me of what's the Bubba Sparks song with Yin Yang Twins, and
time?
and, and you had and you also had David Banner with the
You talking about Miss New Booty?
yeah, Miss New Booty, and you had
Yeah,
a song with David
and
Banner
Play.
back then with the work and things like that. That had the workout theme. It's like, look, I'll go out here and do what some of these other people are doing. If them songs probably came a little after, around the same time. But you
Yeah.
can actually see the level of success with when I do this and when I do Jesus Walks and when I do All Falls Down.
Mm,
The litmus test to those people who said that maybe you didn't do enough of this. So you're not
mm,
going to want me to change. And workout plans showed that, I'll play that game and we'll put it out. We'll make a video for it and everything. Give it the same
mm,
effort. And let's put that up against these other records. It's Through the Wire. Let's put that up against All Falls Down, Jesus Walks. You have no argument at that point.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow,
So
that's a damn good observation.
Slow Jams is another one. I think Slow Jams is fucking brilliant on every level. I think
It's
it's
the
the
best hook.
first. It's the first song I feel like I heard from this album. I heard this early, early. I heard this
Yeah,
very early.
I heard
Um,
Through the Wire first, and then Slow Jams. But this is yeah,
yeah, I
it's
feel
incredible.
like I heard Slow Jam like on a mixtape or something. I heard this very early, and I was like, "Yo, this is crazy." And all right, let's go to the production side of it, right? So this one happened when he was in LA after the accident. Rockefeller stopped their support of his album. His budget, wasn't cleared or anything at that point because they didn't know what he was going to be looking like or sounding like after the accident. And so, he pulled things together and made this happen himself. And it's magic to really see him in the studio guiding Jamie Foxx through all of these parts. He came with the hook, he came with the concept, obviously the
Mhm.
sample, and again, like I said, back to back with another song and that was for the ladies, but this one was clearly for the ladies. They even said it on the record. The concept is the fact that, yo, man, at the time when you get in the club, it wasn't no slow songs. Everybody's high energy and all of this stuff, and then you have a comedian in Jamie Foxx to be able to articulate that.
Yeah.
As a producer, he allowed Jamie to utilize both of his gifts as a comedian, a personality, and as a vocalist. And at the time, nobody was letting Jamie flex his vocal skills on a record. So you had two underdogs here who were, hungry and ready to make a name for themselves on a record. I feel like
Yeah.
this is one of those still tipping type of records where it really helped launch three careers. Now, granted, Twister was around, but this put Twister in a whole different light.
Whole
And the way
nother,
he set
absolutely.
Twister up on this feature with the whole sped up thing, and this is supposed to be slow jams, and it's brilliant. It's
Yeah.
just brilliant, man.
Yeah. Oh
It's
man.
brilliant work, man. And musically, it's all the way there. Now, this is back in the day when people would have multiple songs on, or the same song on multiple projects, rather.
Yeah.
You could tell the
Yeah.
difference from a production standpoint from the one that's on Kanye's album and the one that's on Twista's
Yeah.
album.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like what
Which is
Dr. Dre did with Corrupt with the Hoes a Housewife, the one that's on Corrupt's album is different than the one that's on 2001.
yeah. Oh man. Nah, I can't say enough about this song, man.
Yeah,
It's the best hook on the album.
it is.
Yeah, like it's the best hook.
He came with the hook. We saw him do that. He said she wants a mom and get. And then even at the end when he's talking to, he was like, "Yo, just name some singers." And
Yeah,
it's like it's
yeah, yeah, and
nobody would have produced this for him.
mm,
Nobody.
mm, and and during that part, like just that extended sort of section where he's just going on, like it's brilliant, man. It's
It is.
brilliant.
Can't say enough. Breathe in, breathe out. I feel like it's one of the lower moments on the album,
Yeah,
production wise, and I think that when the album doesn't give you too much imagination, production wise, the song itself suffers from that. Um,
yeah,
and most people it does, but it's in a different way on this album.
yeah, and I feel like I always wanted to know the story behind the song. With
Me
like,
too.
there's no Luda verse. He sound and like even on in the documentary, he's kind of in and out with it. He lays it down and he's like, all right, I'm out. And
Ludacris also kind of, and not to cut you off, Luda's in the car and they go out there to check on Luda or whatever, and Luda's basically saying, "Yo, I'm almost finished with my verse." So I don't know if a verse wasn't good enough, or I don't know if he was just playing Kanye out, where it was like he was acting like he had a verse, and then ended up just coming in and doing a hook or something. And like you said, he was in and out.
yeah,
What a
yeah,
huge opportunity missed by Ludacris to have a great verse on this album.
yeah. It definitely felt like this was the one moment that felt like because I'm sure Kanye was calling in favors, but also at least at that time, how features were done, it was sort of a quid pro quo situation where
Yep.
you do an exchange,
I made
feature for a
stand up.
feature.
What's up? Yeah.
Yeah, and so it sort of feels like Luda was just fulfilling his end of the bargain,
Yeah.
as a formality, as opposed to really vibing with them and really seeing what they could do to take this record to the next level.
Yeah.
Almost like he didn't believe in it, and
Yeah.
whatever. And
But you know what? We never saw Luda on a Kanye project again.
right,
And
right,
all of the other people we can't say that for. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah,
everybody else on this album, they made it on another Kanye project. Luda hasn't.
hmm yeah, yeah, yeah. It definitely felt like a missed opportunity. I actually like the beat. I like the beat the same way that I like to get them high beat. It's like it's simple, but it just depends on what you do over it.
Hmm.
They get them high had a very clear concept, and like you said, it set up Common really well. I think had the same approach going into Breathe In, Breathe Out. It could have it conceptually it probably could have been more,
Yeah.
and it could have been a better song that had more replay value, but it was just and it was ludicrous, but also like he was losing his voice. It sounded like he was losing his voice.
Yeah. He
You
sounded
know what I
very
mean?
raspy on there. Like you want to talk
Yeah,
about now I can't just throw Jay-Z that what I said with Jay, because Jay, even though he recycled his verse and clearly didn't believe in the project, the verses are great. Luda didn't give Kanye his best for this project, and I hope as an artist, hearing that back and seeing the success of this album, how excellent this album is, he regrets that. You know what I mean? And this is and the unfortunate part about that too is we saw Ludacris's grind and we saw him put out Incognito, probably having to ask for favors as well, being a radio personality and
right.
people not believing in what he did. And and you see the next person over here, and you didn't give them that level um, of effort that people gave you when you were independent. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
That's unfortunate to see.
yeah,
And
yeah.
Kanye wasn't even independent, and this is somebody who had already made stand up for you. You know what I'm saying? And like you
Right.
said,
He made Stand Up and he made that the Shauna song too.
yeah,
Yep,
you're right.
everything's gonna be all right. Like he gave him two
Right.
joints.
You're right. Are you talking about Trina? Yeah.
Or Trina, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just want to correct it so that people don't kill you in the comments.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
School Spirit, man. School Spirit was dope, and I listened to that
Yeah,
before the show because I feel like Workout Plan, the weakest song on the album, in my opinion, is Breathe In, Breathe Out, and then maybe Workout Plan. And we used to always put, or at least I did, School Spirit in that conversation as well. Probably because of how high the dynamics are at the very beginning of the album and towards the end. And we're going to get to those
right.
because I know you got to go in a second. And but School Spirit is actually really good. It's a really good solo Kanye West song. I think that this is an opportunity for him to go out there and show what he can do on his signature soul sample, production without all of the super produced things that he's doing towards the top and the back half of the album. But
Yeah,
I think this is definitely a necessary song. If I'm cutting any song on the album, it's definitely Breathe In, Breathe Out, but I'm keeping School Spirit. It's a glue record.
absolutely. And it's one of my favorite hooks on the album, and it goes to show that sometimes the simplest rappers make the best songwriters because he was able to use the opening line on that as another hook for an even bigger hit song. I'm gonna get on this TV, mama. I'm gonna push it down. Like
Yeah.
that's crazy.
It really is. And,
Yeah.
he was attempting to possibly make, a sorority fraternity anthem that could have
Mm.
happened, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
Alpha Step, Omega Step, and I'm sure
Yeah.
it's been utilized, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that, like you said, that's smart songwriting.
Yeah.
'Cause he is the rapper at that time to do that and speak about and you use that to speak on the theme of this overall effort. Now
Yeah.
those the degree skits and stuff are hilarious. I mean, I know we don't have a whole lot of time to spend on those, but those are just hilarious, and it's great. Great production choices there, man. I think that the artists that when you really peel back the layers, the best produced albums are the ones that have really dope produced skits as well.
Yes.
I've never
I
been a
agree.
huge fan of skits because I'm such a music person. I don't want
Yeah.
anything to get in the way of the music. But
Yeah.
if we really think about the greatest hip hop albums and productions, they have great, memorable
They
skits. And
do.
this is
They
no
do.
different. Late registrations in that conversation as well. To
Yeah.
me, if someone asked me the biggest difference between those two efforts and graduation and my beautiful dark twisted fantasy, they don't have those hilarious skits and those meaningful skits that pull the songs together like
Right.
College Dropout and Late Registration do.
Agreed. Agreed.
And when they're not there, they're definitely missing. All right, two words. Two words is my favorite Kanye West beat. It's my favorite song on this album. It's one of my favorite Kanye West verses. The drill sample, "Peace and Love," was also used by Eminem when he made "On Fire" for Lloyd Banks. Is it? But yeah,
Oh,
it just
okay.
goes to show
I didn't
you
realize it.
how you give one person one sample and you give the other person another sample, and what
Hmm.
one person does with it. That doom 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 doom, and then the Harlem's Boys Choir on that. Like it's chilling. I'm getting chills even
Yeah.
talking about it. Like
Yeah.
it's and the intensity by Mos Def and Kanye. My only critique with this song is maybe Freeway didn't get the memo of again, and when we start breaking this album down, you could tell the people that were there getting the vibes and the people that were just there because they were asked to be there. You know what I'm saying? And Most Def's intensity and Ye's intensity on here, it's just you feel it like screaming, Jesus, save me. And
Yeah.
feel like it rained till the roof caved in. Like I don't even know if Freeway heard these verses. Like I don't, you know what I mean?
So
Like
I'm a big Freeway fan. Like
me too,
Philadelphia
because he has
Free
the
Philadelphia.
capabilities to go there. That's why I'm like
Yeah.
maybe he didn't hear it or
I
something.
Yeah, and I don't dislike his verse, but I definitely feel like I wonder if it was because I get the sense that a lot of those artists who had certain images already established
Mm,
street images. I wonder how difficult or easy it was to jump into Kanye's world for that reason, because it's so different. And it I think for people like you and I who like we do music and love music or whatever, I think it's easy for us. Is like, yeah, it makes sense. Like all you got to do is XYZ. But I wonder how much for the street rapper who, this is the image that they're putting out there. This is the type of music that they're known for. I wonder how difficult or not difficult it was or it is to work with someone like Kanye that he sort of forces a different side of you. He forces out a different side of you, and you're either comfortable with that side or you're not. I don't know.
Yeah, like you said, you're stepping into a whole different world, and you don't really know how to react to it. I mean, again, I would love to have heard a "What We Do Is Wrong" approach type for Freeway, but they made it work. And not to say Freeways versus Whack or anything, it's just the intensity of most. Like,
Yeah,
2 words, United States, no love, no breaks, I'm sorry, no love, no breaks. Um, I'm tripping. Happens when you're recording. Cracks, no fat folks, Big Mac, fat folks, ecstasy capsules, presidential scandals. Everybody move. Like most stuff
yeah,
was, man.
yeah,
I, Mel Steph is the most talented, naturally talented MC I've ever heard. I mean, it's
yeah.
so fucking effortless, man. Like, it sounds like he's just talking, and it's just straight up greatness. And he goes in there, and that video is awesome. It's grainy,
Crazy.
very
Yeah.
Chicago. You could tell that,
Mhm.
what I'm saying, they shot, Moses Park in Brooklyn. You could even see some of the, the New York landmarks and things like that, man. And it's just, to me, and even watching that the behind the scenes stuff from that song specifically, they held on to the song for a very long time.
Yeah.
Most Def and Kanye, I feel like, were rapping this at one of Talib and Moses' shows back in 2001,
Yeah.
2002, excuse me. And the biggest missed opportunity, I feel like, is the fact that we never got that Most Def Kanye West album. They were talking about Most West. Because the truth is, yes, Talib was out there and rocked with Kanye early, but for me, it felt like Talib wanted beats. Like a lot of people did. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I could tell that people like Most Def and Pharrell really fucked with what Kanye was doing.
Really rock with him.
And you could even see in Moses' body language when Kanye was spitting, like he was really feeling that shit. And I really hate that they didn't get an opportunity to make a full effort together, because the creativity from those two, man,
Crazy.
that should have been Watch the Throne for me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and Jay is adaptable to work it out, same as Jay. But as far as like natural synergy, man, I really wish
Yeah.
we could have gotten, Most Def and Ye. And yeah, it's one of those great things in hip hop that just never happened. And I could speak
Yeah.
on about it, but Through the Wire. What can we say
Shoot.
about Through the Wire?
But
Do you want to start or?
yeah, I could start. What I didn't know was that he used the players ball drums.
I can't
That's
unhear
crazy.
it now. After you
I
told me
can't
that,
unhear it. Yeah.
yeah, yep.
Yeah, I didn't know that so he borrowed the kick, the snare and the hi-hat from it, and he put his signature bongos on top of it. Um this is one of those it's it couldn't have happened at a more perfect time. Obviously, he got in the car accident, and that's unfortunate. But how he was able to turn that, like he said, so I turned tragedy to triumph. I think is what
Mm,
makes this song so special. And I'm glad, even though he did re-record it, he re-recorded it still with his jaw wired. His jaw was still wired even with the re-recording, but the second go round, he found ways to articulate himself better.
mhm,
But talking about the imperfections, talking about
mm,
the those types of things, I'm glad that he chose to keep keep the takes with his jaw wired shut, and because he could have easily waited until it was all removed and then spit it, perfect.
Well, he didn't
You
have
know,
time, I don't think, because again, he needed to open the budget back up and he wanted to document this whole journey. But you're right, he could have waited that out, and but it was just a level of, this is an intense situation, and I don't have time to get put on the shelf even further. But you're right. I mean, I think Cell Therapy and Through the Wire, to me, are two of the most daring first singles in hip hop history. When you have, because for a lot of people, this is the first time they actually heard Kanye West rhyme. So people are hearing you where you don't even sound like yourself for the first time, and
mm,
people are judging what you sound like, and and your music and your skill set as a rapper based on what you don't even really sound like. You know what I'm saying? And the fact that as a producer, he had the foresight to say, no, let's capture this moment. Let's document this moment, and let's actually document the audio of how I fucking sound. Like, it's one thing to say what you've been through, but when people can actually hear what you're going through as you're going through it, we don't really get that a lot in this genre. Everything's about being, polished and all of those things. And he went for a raw moment. He captured a raw moment in his life and a turning point in this project, and I just think it's one of the most brilliant things he's ever done as an artist, and that anybody in hip hop's ever done. You can't fake that stuff, man. Like, the accident
yeah,
was real. The
yeah,
having to have a boost for breakfast is real. All of those things are real, man, and you can hear it. And
yeah,
I'm gonna be honest with you, man. When I first heard the song, man, I was like, man, I ain't feel, because I didn't understand everything that he was going through. I was like, man, I don't know, man. I
yeah.
ain't feeling Kanye like
Right,
that
right.
as a rapper, but I didn't really realize what he was doing. And to to do something and understand that people will get it later, that's a special thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, man. And Family Business. I look, these last four songs are one of the strongest closings of a hip hop album, definitely in his catalog. But
Yeah,
period. You got two words: Through the Wire, Family Business, and Last Call. Family Business is a very, very strong song. It's one of the strongest songs on this album, but I think the fact that it is enclosed with some of the strongest songs on the album, it kind of gets overlooked in that facet. Scarface was supposed to come back with a verse or something, and never came back with anything. But I think that that's fine. Him closing out the album on the solo tip is what was needed anyway, and this was the perfect place for Family Business to be. A lot of vocals on there too. Him
a
flexing his
lot of.
production, arranging skills on there. I think it's about
Mhm.
4 or 5 different vocalists on there.
Yeah, and a fun fact: the sample that says "all that glitters is not gold," that is a white man saying
Ken
it.
Lewis.
Matt, that's Ken Lewis, and they just pitched it down, and just one of the many things he contributed to the album.
Like you said, out of tune piano,
Hmm.
to culminate with the actual sample. Like you said, most producers, no knock to anybody out there, would just say, shit, let me just either sample that, or if we got to replay it, we're just gonna replay it with a regular, piano key. No, we gotta make this sample, or this interpolation, excuse me, sound
Yeah,
exactly like the original. And that's no different than anybody that's covering a record. Yes, you want to, when you're covering a record, you don't want it to lose its intensity either. You don't want to sound just like it, like in these situations, but you want to be able to give it its own flair. But the core things that make that song special, you want to still be able to put to the forefront.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I always. Is there anything else you want to say about Family Business before we go to Last Call?
No, I think we covered it
Because
all.
we kind of cover Family Business a little bit at the top as well, man. It's a
Yeah,
brilliant record.
yeah. It's my It's my third favorite song on this album. I love the song so much, man.
The Rain Rain Go Away is just such a, you know,
Yeah,
it's such
yeah,
a great production choice, and it takes you further than just the soulfulness of it. It's kind of like a part two to We Don't Care, you know, and it brings the family in it, and the way it goes off, and then has the little Jay-Z drop in there, and then goes into
mhm.
Last Call. Now, I always wondered back then. I was like, yo, how did he find a Rockefeller sample? And again, things are replayed, not knowing that they replayed these things, even the vocals, and pitched it down. Ken Lewis again. Um, I think Last Call is one of the best outros we've
Absolutely.
seen in hip hop. I liken it to what Jay did on the Black Album, because the Black Album is months before the release of the College Dropout,
Right.
and when Jay kind of goes through his whole career on what first, what is it called, first song, right?
The first
Um,
song, yeah.
my first song, and so I love how he wraps up this whole thing from a narrative standpoint and just speaking to it at the end of this song. And he wraps up the whole journey. And everything that we just heard was the journey. And if you didn't get that sonically, he's verbally telling you, like, look, this is what happened. This is how it happened. This is what's going on. Like, this is really documentation. This album is a documentary.
It is. It
It's,
is. And he's such an underrated storyteller in that way.
yeah,
And no, he's not necessarily delivering the story in rap form on this song, but just the choice to have people come in and lend their vocals to it, whether it was his mom, whether it was Dame, whether it was, whoever, just to like lend a voice there to whatever part of the story he's talking about. And it's just such a brilliant, it's one of those long songs that I don't mind. I never turn it off. Like I
mm,
have to listen to it
right.
every time it comes on, and I don't mind it.
Yeah. I mean, and the whole theme of this album, in my personal opinion, is, believe in yourself, invest in yourself, and you're going to
Absolutely.
get good returns. And I do believe that Last Call speaks to all of those things. And somebody who is doubting, their journey, no matter what their journey is, you could listen to this record and listen to his story at the end of it and be inspired. Like, yo, he made this shit happen. And this is only the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, for him to be able to tell this story on this record like it's the end, but it's literally the beginning, is so impressive. Because, like I said, I'm liking it to Jay-Z's basically speech at the end of his career. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Well, and it goes to show he made an album. The approach to this album was almost like, if I never get another opportunity to do this, this is what I got.
yeah,
And I sort of liken it to Jay's song, my first song, in that way, where if that's always the approach, you won't ever lose that hunger,
yeah.
because there's always something to prove. There's always a next level to get to, and this is Kanye at his hungriest, man, literally.
He put his heart and soul into this album, and I don't feel like he left anything on the table. And to your point, a lot of the times as artists, you try to save some things because you don't want to give everybody everything, because you got to come back again with something. I think he believed so much in himself and his ability as a creative to come with something new that he had no problem giving everything he had to this project,
Yeah,
because I got more. I'll come up with something else. I don't feel like he left anything on the table when it comes to this project. Like, he
yeah,
put everything out there. He put his heart and soul in this. Like you said, Last Call sounds like I may never make another song.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Before we get out of here, what song do you think he recorded last on this? because I know we like to do that on these segments. Because I know it's pretty clear the ones that he recorded first.
Yeah. Recorded last. Probably.
Based on everything we know.
I wonder if he re-recorded All Falls Down later in the
Mm-hmm.
process. Obviously, those lyrics, the song had existed already, but I wonder if he re-recorded the vocals. And then as far as just other songs, I I feel like Workout Plan, like one of those like Workout Plan. Um, Sorry, I'm going through it now. Like basically those songs that we don't have a lot of video footage on, because
Mm,
it seems like the songs that we have the video footage on, those were the songs that he's been sitting on for a minute.
interesting.
So yeah, so
Interesting
I
you
would
say it like that because I was gonna say either Workout Plan, Last Call, or We Don't Care.
gonna say We Don't Care for sure. Last
Yeah.
Call. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, one of those.
All right, man. We knocked this out, man. It's been a lot of research and a lot of time and effort. And you guys hit like and subscribe. Anything we missed in the, anything you think we missed in this, put in the comment section. And if you got any additional information that you think that we need to go back and reprise like we did Represent for Nas on the Illmatic one, let us know that too, because there might be some information that we missed. There's a whole bunch of stuff out there.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
Before we go, what are we doing next? We doing do you want to do Doggy Style, To Pimp a Butterfly? Um,
I like to Pimp a Butterfly.
I like To Pimp a
Um,
Butterfly too.
like and only because like I love, of course, I love Doggy Style, but I like what you said before about we're in the 2000s, maybe establishes something, a piece that's a little later, and then
Okay.
we can come back. We can come back to Doggy Style later.
Okay, and then maybe hit the 80s a little bit too.
Yeah.
All right, man. Appreciate you. And yeah, y'all let us know what y'all think we should do next. If we missed anything, hit like and subscribe. A2HH, man. I appreciate you, babe.
All right.
All right.
Peace.